All right, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Leslie Chasnoff, and I'm the Geekdom Programs Manager here at Geekdom in the space today. And welcome to a lunchtime spotlight series. So we've been hosting a handful of these company spotlight series over the past few months, and it's really been a great opportunity to just highlight some of the fantastic people who are working with Geekdom, out of Geekdom, our Geekdom members, or just part of our larger community. And today's spotlight is specifically on one of our CivTech residency companies, which is really exciting. They have a demo day coming up next Tuesday. And this week is actually their final week of the residency. So it's a really exciting time. So just to give everyone a little more context, if you don't know about CivTechSA, it's a partnership between Geekdom and the City of San Antonio's Office of Innovation. And it's a really, really cool partnership. We basically, our mission is to solve city challenges, so things that the city is really working to improve or they're just not sure how to tackle from a perspective of using technology and innovative problem solving and thinking. So really, CivTech is all about helping our residents at the end of the day, because when the city is working smarter, our residents benefit, right? We as a community benefit. So that's really where the mission extends. We're also all about building this lovely pipeline of tech talent that is civically minded, right? Where you as an entrepreneur, you as a programmer, you as a designer, anything that you're working on in the tech ecosystem and sphere is really thinking about yourself as a citizen who can help in the work that you're doing, contributing to your community as well. And so some of the other programming that CivTech does is we work with students in our education pillar. So we have these challenges that the city gives us every year. We toss them out to students who are in middle school, high school, and universities, and we let them work on them and just tell us how to fix these problems, right? So that's pretty cool. We also work with entrepreneurs through a variety of different programs throughout the year. So we host datathons, hackathons, codathons, smart city startup weekends, all kinds of stuff to just get the larger entrepreneurial community involved in helping us solve some of these challenges. And then what we're kind of talking about today and what we're here for today is our residency program. So the residency program is a super special program. It's one of the coolest things I think that CivTech does. It lets companies apply through a formal process with the city to solve one of these challenges in 16 weeks. So if the companies are selected, they work directly with a department in the city on a very specific challenge, and they create a custom solution over 16 weeks, which really is a super short amount of time to tackle these challenges. They're quite large challenges. And then at the end of the 16 weeks, they present to the city departments kind of all of the work that they have done, and they showcase them at the demo day. And then they might take that project forward with the city, which is really exciting because we love to see these problems solved and implemented, right? We want to see these things come to life. So today we're here with one of our two residency companies, RedSquared Consulting, and they have taken on this ridiculously crazy large task. I commend them so much for even applying because it just gives me like anxiety to think about how to even solve this. But they are working on creating a prototype for one app that the city would have that would let us as residents do all the things you can think of, all the interactions that you do with the city. So whether that's paying a bill, paying a parking ticket, applying for a permit, maybe just seeing what's going on at the parks this weekend, all kinds of things. And they've been doing this through a really unique approach because RedSquared is all about human-centered design and focusing on customer-oriented design. And in this case, resident-oriented design, right? And also taking a look at like what staff is thinking and how they actually operate today, and just gathering so much different feedback through a really fascinating process, so that the product at the end is something that really does solve the problems, right? Problems that maybe we didn't even see when we were originally thinking about this challenge. So I will let the team kind of introduce themselves. So Team RedSquared, would you like to give your introduction?
Sure. Well, I'll go ahead and start. I'll explain the background behind me. So it is the Red Square in Moscow, so which is my hometown. Um, and that explains our name, Red Squared. A little bit of play on in English language on art and science. Red is color, art, and squared could be interpreted as a mathematical term as well. So that was our best idea at a time, and we're keep rolling with it. So my name is Zhenya, Jenia, for those who can't see the name on the screen. So I was born and raised in Moscow, and it happened to be during the Cold War, some of that upbringing. So for me, private ownership and like being entrepreneur was really kind of a non-existing concept because it was not a concept in the Soviet Union when I was growing up. So I was prepared to work in a state-owned enterprise and kind of do that for the rest of my life. Well, obviously that was not in the cards for me. So I'm here now in the US, and we've been, Tara and I have been operating RedSquared Consulting for over 6 years now. And my background as I came to sort of implement the business idea. My background is in business strategy, user-centered design, project management. So I spent a very interesting and rewarding career at USAA and kind of doing things on my own now. So, and I'll pass it on to the next person.
So my name is Tara Schwegler, and as Zhenya mentioned, she and I have been working with RedSquared for the past 6 years, and I am an anthropologist by training. And when I usually say that to people, they always ask me, "Can you show me your bones? Do you have any bones? What have you dug up?" And I didn't dig anything up. I didn't study ancient civilizations. I actually started my career as an academic anthropologist, and my dissertation research at the University of Chicago centered on how do economic ideas get integrated into the policymaking process. So I spent a year living in Mexico and doing research with Mexican policymakers to really understand this phenomenon from their perspective. And even though I didn't know it at the time, I came to realize as I made a transition into the business world that as an anthropologist, I am kind of naturally, this idea of human-centered design is part of my DNA. This idea that you build empathy for the people around you and try to understand the world from their perspective. That's what we do when we design an app or we work with a company. We try to understand the problem from the user's perspective. And so I brought when I came to San Antonio after working at the University of Chicago, I started working at USAA as part of their research team, again, to try to understand what makes people tick, what do they think, and why do they do the things they do, which are actually more complicated questions than you would think. And through that work, I met Zhenya, and the two of us decided that this perspective is most effective when we take it outside of a single organization and really share it with other organizations. So we have worked with numerous financial service companies across the country. We've worked with several big nonprofits across the country, and we're very pleased to be working with the city. So I will turn it over to David.
Thanks, Tara. And I'm actually sort of a more recent addition to the RedSquared team. My background, actually kind of like Tara, my undergraduate training is in anthropology as well. And I found myself, in healthcare organizations and healthcare management, and quickly ascended, through those ranks, and ended up starting a consulting firm and going to get my MBA in healthcare management. I've been for the past 12 years deploying enterprise level software in healthcare organizations across the country. I think Tara and Zhenya, pulled me in for sort of that tech aspect, sort of having some of the product management, the change management, implementation skill sets. I've had a couple of different companies, and one of them is a current organization that, it's a boutique healthcare consulting firm. And so, I guess I'm a serial entrepreneur. And so this was a highly appealing project. We love solving problems. And as Tara alluded to, anthropologists are uniquely trained to look at behavior and root causation for why something is either broken or why something works in a society. And there's no better sort of test environment than this CivTech challenge. So it's been really fascinating and just really exciting and fulfilling.
Wonderful. Yes. Thank you guys for sharing all of your backgrounds. I think that the three of you, getting to know you over the residency program, you're just such fascinating people with such fascinating backgrounds and interests, and just every time we meet, I feel like I learn new things. So it's wonderful. So let's talk a little bit more about RedSquared. So just tell us about what it is you guys do, kind of some of the processes. Why does human-centered design matter? I mean, you guys stand for so much and you're very, very passionate about it. So I want you to share with everyone else your passion for all of these things.
Okay, absolutely. I'll tee it up, and then Tara and David will, since I'm not the anthropologist, I'll let them do the anthropologist stuff, and I'll cover the business. Well, I think it's very important for anybody who's starting a business to kind of besides all the wonderful like being independent and put a dent into the universe. It's what kind of a dent? Like, what is the purpose? What is your unique mission? And we're fortunate that Tara and I had this vision and mission. We want to inspire businesses to become more human through customer understanding and empathy. If we look at the history of the business, it was not the founding pillars of the business, if you think of the industrial age and the conditions there. So, and that's how today's work week formed, and a lot of principles that we sort of carry on today were formed at that age. So we wanted to bring more of a human aspect. And there's another angle to our mission, is to advance women's journey in business and consulting world. We believe that women have a great aptitude to communicate empathy. And so we're kind of trailblazing for women to create new standards and opportunities in the consulting world. And Tara and I we have a lot of respect for traditional consulting industry. We worked with some phenomenal people, and we just wanted to really inspire, especially younger generation of women. Hey, you can do it too. It's perfectly fine. And you can have crazy hair and, crazy outfits, and, it doesn't matter. So that's really our vision, our core. We love what we do, but we also have a very unique vision of what we want to accomplish. So we're a little different. We use human sciences to solve complex business problems. So in the age of digital revolution, I know we're still betting on a human factor, old-fashioned us, but in our approach, we really combine the scientific rigor, the business acumen, and creativity. And why do we study experiences? Well, because not everything in life can be reduced to numbers. Life is complex. Not all the decisions are rational. And what we really help companies and our partners to discover is kind of real people behind the numbers and what really matters to them. And it's not easy. And that's where human-centered design comes in. And Tara, maybe you could expand on that somewhat, and then we'll pass it on to David.
Great. And what I should say is that when a company comes to us, they don't usually ask, oh, I want an anthropologist to solve this problem. They usually have a complex problem that they've tried their standard approaches to, their standard problem solving approaches, and they're not working. And so the types of projects that we work on, we've had banks come to us and say, we understand that the newer generation is interested in different things. How do we develop products to appeal to those customers? We actually worked with a church once that wanted to better understand how can we improve the church going experience for the people who attend, for a congregation. So we've done this in a variety of different contexts. We worked with one of the largest automobile clubs in the United States and helped them understand what is it that their members, when they are stranded on the roadside, what is it that they really need? What are the aspects of that experience that are really going to change the way they evaluate the auto club and how they talk about the auto club, and what are the investments the auto club can make to really enhance the experience? So Zhenya mentioned human-centered design, and it is a creative problem-solving approach that starts with the people you're designing for. And so basically what we do whenever we're given a challenge is we think about it from the perspective of the end user. So if we're talking about the automobile club, we think about the people who are stranded at the side of the road. We think about the tow truck drivers. We do research with those people to really understand what is the experience they're having, what are their needs, what do they want to be happening. So believe it or not, if Zhenya and I spent hours in tow trucks talking to people on the side of the road and talking to people, talking to the tow truck drivers and understanding what does everybody in this equation need. So when we talk about being human first, instead of thinking about what is it that the business wants to do, we think about what is it that the customers or the clients want and how can we align that to the business needs. And I brought a little example today, guys, of what human-centered design, like what does it mean? We can talk about it, but can you see my Whataburger ketchup bottle? Okay. Unfortunately, I can't take questions for anybody to kind of figure out what's user-centered about this, but I'll give you a hint. Remember back in the days when most ketchup bottles were like this? Well, it was stressful to be at a restaurant and to pick up a ketchup bottle and to go like this and to try to get the ketchup out, right? It was a pain point. And so designers observed that and said, hey, there's a really simple fix to this. We could turn this over and we could alleviate the pain point. And it's a trivial example, but that's really how we go about our work, is trying to figure out what are the pain points and how do we solve for them. And Leslie, when you mentioned the anxiety about the app, first of all, wow, I mean, we've been working hard, but you're right, it is a huge challenge. And we used the research with residents to make that challenge easier, because there's a whole universe of possibilities for this app. But what really matters to us is figuring out, what do residents want to do? What are the most frequent tasks they're trying to accomplish? How do they want those to be organized? And how can we make this simple and easy? Because the city provides so much to the residents. It's incredible. I am just humbled by the work that our city employees do every day to make San Antonio a great place to live. But what the problem is that sometimes they have so much to offer that it's hard for residents to find what they need. And so for us, we rethought the challenge a bit in terms of, okay, so there are all these great resources. How do we organize them and prioritize them in a way to facilitate access for residents? So that's really how this human approach comes in. And I'll turn it over to David.
Yeah, thank you. And, really just to kind of piggyback on what Zhenya and Tara said, essentially, when some of these problems come to light as far as, access to services, or, just residents just not finding, their way, navigating through city government and things like that, it's really just indicative of, just maybe a design or a process or even a flow issue. And so I think that while the challenge is actually pretty overwhelming, if you were to think about all of the aspects that the One City app is going to eventually have to incorporate. What we're really trying to do at the end of the day is create the concept of the engaged resident. And so you'll see that in our pitch, that we're going to emphasize that the engaged resident is the resident that where, you know, they feel like they've been met where they're at. Okay, so the city government, you know, they're essentially going to do a paradigm shift, and we're going to meet the residents where they're at instead of asking them to meet us where we're at. And, you know, weeding through thousands of pages of city code or zoning, you know, regulations or permitting requirements really make it a lot easier for the residents to navigate. And then when you have an engaged resident, not only they're more participatory, but they're more apt to connect with others. They're more apt to really enrich just sort of the fabric of the city. And eventually, I think that goes viral. And what you do is you create a true sense of community, and then there's more people who want to come. And so there's more growth. And there's just through the sense of community, and kind of to speak to Jenia's point, like it may be an old fashioned, you know, people problem, but let me tell you, at the end of the day, people are the cause of and the solution to a lot of these problems. So if we can create and design a solution through technology that'll meet them where they're at, then I think we're going to enrich really just the experience here in San Antonio.
David made such an interesting point. I just couldn't help but interject a little bit that so it's kind of like positioned as a technology challenge, and it's absolutely is. And there is still kind of, maybe because we get too many news from the Silicon Valley, that there is this magic app that's going to make everybody happy and solve all of our problems one of these days. I'm still waiting for it. But it just sort of like technology is a panacea. Everything is just going to start working one day, and it's going to be flawless. And what we interviewed plenty of technologists, and there are plenty of wonderful technology opportunities which we're seizing and advancing. But you know what we hear most often? It's not a technology problem. It's a human problem. It's a collaboration problem. It's a sharing problem. It's change management problem. It's people don't want, we've always done it like that. Why change? It's like, well, this is my department, and that's other thing is not my responsibility. So many opportunities. And I'll tell you, if people were easy, like we would have solved, it's like that's really what we're after. It's not just the technology, but who uses it, how we use it, how we change or not with the technology. So quite fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that when I feel like Craig said the approach to this was much more about the looking from the outside in versus inside out as far as the city goes. And I think that's a really important point to make about how you guys have approached this challenge, is that, you know, it's less from that technical perspective and like, okay, we just got to build an app, and more of like, no, we're going to reframe the way the city and residents work together and communicate with each other. And I think that's what's so really, really special about the way you guys are approaching it. So I do want you guys to talk a little bit more about the challenge itself and how you've approached this solution, because you know, as you guys have said, and we've all talked about it too, your background is not necessarily in being a developer, a programmer, you know, building the app itself. And you guys are teaming up with a local technology company, Iris, to actually execute the prototype for this, which has been a wonderful collaboration. So shout out to Iris. But you guys have also done this, I mean, the bulk and the meat behind your residency has been the research and the design sprints and this whole process to get you to the prototype at the very end. So I would love for you guys to share more about how you've tackled this challenge.
Well, absolutely. And I think you mentioned in the beginning that this challenge is not quite like, it could be a little scary if you read it. You know, it's like, just make things easy and intuitive and then make everybody feel good. Like, yeah, no problem. You know, it reminds me of a story. I was running a New York marathon couple of years ago, and New York is just known for those, like, the great signs, great fan support. And somebody, like, it was like mile 18 when things get tough, and somebody had that poster, yeah, 6 months ago it looked like a good idea. And so it's like, yeah, 16 weeks ago signing up for this challenge did look like a good idea, but we knew what we were signing up for. An approach that I'm going to talk about it broadly, and then I'll ask David and Tara to elaborate. So there is a method to our madness, and the first step is to understand. And that's where user-centered design, human-centered design comes in. It is based on empathy or understanding of the world from the user's perspective. And in this case, for us, it means doing research with the San Antonio residents, and not just the residents, employees and stakeholders and leadership, and also community leaders, because San Antonio is not just kind of like, it's not just a two-way traffic, residents and the city. So we put about 150 or more hours of research understanding what the problem is and which problems are more important than the others. So that's where we kind of create a foundation of what are we going to solve, and that's where we detect needs beneath the need. So so that happened. Okay, now what? We have all those great insights. And you know, if it were easy, if people were just telling us, hey, I need a new iPhone, I need this, and I need you know, better car, it would have been easy. We would have been just executing on the orders. But people really don't know what they want. They know what makes their lives uncomfortable. They know what the roadblocks are, but so we're the people who will have to be synthesizing it and coming up with a solution. We used a very collaborative methodology called design sprints. You bring, it's not just David, Tara, and I in an ivory tower somewhere where nobody's allowed to come in with masks on our faces, you know, cooking some secret sauce. It was very collaborative. So we had city leadership. We actually invited some of the residents that we interviewed to help us create the solutions. We had some community leaders. We had some technical experts. So all this diversity brings diverse solutions and diverse opinions. So we're on those design sprints for 4 days in a row. We were exhausted. We created some phenomenal artifacts and ideas, and then we distilled those ideas, and now we're in the final phase, which is called implementation. That's when we can give our technology partner, which is the IRIS team, okay, this is what we're solving for. Those are the user scenarios. Those are the outcomes that we want, and those are the key points of integrating, you know, this service with this service. So again, the approach is understand, design, and implement. So that's in the broad strokes, and I will pass it on to whoever wants to take it, David or Tara, to kind of expand a little bit and add some color to that.
I'll start out talking about the research, because we use this term research over and over again, and we tell you we're doing research with residents. So what does that actually mean? Well, I'll tell you, in non-COVID times, that would have meant us going down to where the residents conduct their business with the city already. It would have meant us going to payment centers, for us going to various different city departments and really observing and speaking one-on-one with residents as they're going through the process of managing their interactions with the city. Unfortunately, that was not an option for us. So what we had to do is figure out, how do we understand what residents want and need? What's the best way for us to do that? And there are a variety of different techniques we can use, but we settled on online focus groups as the best strategy available to us in a socially distanced world. And so we chose residents from all over the city. We wanted to make sure that we weren't just talking to people who lived on the west side or people who lived on the north side. We wanted to have a broad group of residents represented. So we thought about gender, we thought about race, we thought about income level. We wanted to have all of those viewpoints. And we brought them together in small online focus groups of about 5 to 6 per group, and talked to them about, how do you interact with the city? We actually had them make collages to tell us about their most frequent interactions with the city. And we discovered through that process that some of the things in the challenge were important to them, but some of the things in the challenge didn't matter so much. So one insight that came out of these interviews, which was so fascinating to us, was that many residents don't really make a distinction between some city, county, and state services. So when we asked some of these residents, tell us about your interactions with the city, a lot of them said, well, let me tell you how long I waited in line at the DMV. Or, my gosh, it can be a hassle to renew my license plates. And the three of us are looking at each other like, huh. And if it had happened just once, we'd say, well, that was an outlier, but it happened repeatedly. We had residents showing us their Bexar County appraisal district bills and saying, this is how I interact with the city. I pay my taxes to the city. So it really forced us to rethink some of these jurisdictional boundaries that even though they're important for the administration of government, from a resident perspective, they're not always that significant or meaningful. So we took this insight into our design process, and we're thinking about how can we erase this boundary between these levels of government. Another great example is parks. People will come and will look for a park in their area. They don't care if it's a county park or a city park. I mean, honestly, until I started working more closely with the city government, I didn't know. So what we need to do is they want to go to a park. It shouldn't matter which type of park it is. Display all the parks. So that we had some of these insights. And another one that came through that just really moved me and was surprising is the focus of the challenge was make a one-stop shop. And it was really transaction focused on, okay, what transactions do residents want to interact with the city most frequently with? What we heard from residents is that what makes San Antonio is the community. And they understand the importance of government, and they understand the importance of getting their permits and doing all those other things. But to them, San Antonio means more. It is the connection that they feel with other residents. And over again, they would tell us, I want to know what's going on in my community. I want to be out there participating with my fellow residents and feeling, and I'll just throw in an anthropological term here, what Emil Durkheim called collective effervescence. If you've ever been in an event and you just feel that electricity of the crowd, that's what sustains our community. And when we think about COVID times, that's what so much of us are craving and missing. And so the insight about making events the focal point of this app is something that we took into the design sprints and took very seriously. So, and just to give you one last peek of the research, Shenya mentioned in the design sprints, we had residents offering feedback and talking with us as we were designing so that we never lose that resident voice in the back of our heads. But we also have taken at every stage the prototypes that we've put together and tested them with residents. And we said, don't hold back. We won't cry if you tell us it's bad, but we need to know if this were an actual app, how would you react? Would you say, hey, this is cool, I want to use it? Or, oh my gosh, no, I don't even want to download that from the App Store. And it was that candid feedback that made us better and made us accountable to the residents. So I will turn it over to David.
Yeah, no, those are all amazing points. And I think we could just go on and on about what we learned during the research. One of the really neat things was when you're doing these traditionally face-to-face exercises, especially in the research focus groups, like there's always like a warm-up period. And so what we found with sort of that online Zoom format, people broke down barriers so much more quickly. There wasn't class, socioeconomic, or really any other disparities that people were able to contextualize because they were in the same room together, just besides awkwardness among strangers. So they were able to really kind of like open up a lot faster and give us more, almost seemingly more genuine information and more candid feedback. And the same thing with the design sprints. The really interesting thing was, that's a face-to-face traditional methodology, but we just kind of retooled some webcam and mic and Zoom, tools, and we made it work. And so we completely, I always say, we rethought and redesigned the creative process during this particular global pandemic, for the challenge. And essentially it's all about people, all over again. They want to connect, they want meaning, and they, initially the app and the challenge was kind of positioned as more transactional in nature, payment based, you know, license based, and all these transactions. But really, the citizens just want to be able to engage, you know, minimally on the transactional side, and they want to be involved and more engaged on the social side.
Yeah, David, great point on kind of transaction versus relationship. And we jumped on this challenge kind of honestly thinking more how to streamline all those wonderful transactions and payments. And you know, it's like, who gets excited about paying bills? Like anybody like on the so it's not really what brings people together. So we were just so pleasantly surprised when residents kind of, they're seeking connection, they want a relationship. And I know it's maybe a little bit far-fetched that the app would be this first step, but it could, because it can show how the city works for the residents. And then there is an appreciation. There's a lot of appreciation already from our residents of what the city is doing for them, but making things easier and, you know, minimize the scrolling and all the you know, like jumping through hoops. I'll just put it as a broad scientific term. So I think that will be very well received. And for us to think about, let's just, like when an electrician comes to the house, like we don't need a whole story on how our house is wired. We just need that our stove to work, or we just need the AC to be on. We don't need a lecture. And oftentimes it is tempting to engage in some kind of a lecture. Let us just understand. Let us tell you how complicated jurisdiction is and the boundaries and the code and this. Well, we as residents, we're not very interested in that. We just want our problem solved. So at the end of the day, that's how the governments and lots of other companies fit in our lives. We're living our lives, and then when the problem comes, we want it to be solved, and we want people to be nice and polite. And in return, we will be nice and polite and we'll give back. And for the city, our residents are willing to give back a whole lot. So we're excited about that.
Yes, thank you guys so much for sharing a lot of those insights. I know that they've been really eye-opening, I think, for all of us that have gotten to be part of the process and see you go through the process. And you know, I think it was just, it's always so cool to see the pieces of the design sprints. I think that was really, really awesome to watch and see you guys, you know, maneuvering everything on the Zoom with all this very diverse set of people and getting their ideas kind of thrown in there. It was really, really wonderful to see. And yeah, just so many great insights that are informing the app, which is really exciting. We had a question come through that I think we should turn our attention to now, because it's a pretty big, kind of heavy question in my opinion, but I think it's also really fascinating. So how might human-centered design help solve our toughest social justice community challenges right now? So some of the processes and the ways that you guys tackle your work, how could we apply that to some of these larger social justice challenges that we're facing in our community? I know it's a big one, so if you need to take a breath before you answer.
No, we love big questions, because honestly, this has been something that's foremost on our mind, because something that we haven't talked about to date is equity, and the importance of equity in our community, and ensuring that when we build an app, we're building an app that speaks to all of the needs of our residents, not just the needs of a particular slice. And so to give you an example, one of the things that really distinguishes our app is that we talk to a number of nonprofit leaders and people who deal with marginalized communities. So people who are experiencing homelessness, people who are experiencing food insecurity, people who are experiencing a myriad of vulnerabilities. And we talk to those leaders and ask them, okay, when someone is looking for help, what are the words that they use? What are the ways in which they frame that conversation? And we had a very interesting conversation with someone from Haven for Hope, who said, when you talk about a homeless population or a homeless person, basically what you're doing is defining that person's entire identity in terms of a condition. And we don't like to do do that, we like to talk about people who are experiencing homelessness, because that shows that this is a temporary condition, not a permanent feature. And so we've tried to integrate that social justice component into the way that we're thinking about the app. But Leslie, the point is broader than that. The question is broader than that. And I'll say it very simply, that a lot of times people who are trying to solve these problems may not realize that the best way to understand is to actually go and build empathy for the populations they're trying to solve for. There is, especially in the realm of social justice, a lot of moralizing that goes on about this is what people should do, or this is how, if I were in that situation, I would do X, Y, and Z. Well, until you've actually sat with someone who lost their home because of a drug addiction or has going through these circumstances, until you understand the struggles of what life is like for them every day, I find that it's very difficult to step back and say what I would or wouldn't do. And maybe what I would or wouldn't do isn't as relevant as what people are doing. And so I would say that the piece of this human-centered design that we can figure out that really helps us with the social justice component is building that empathy for those populations and designing solutions that meet their needs, not needs that we as outsiders think they should have, but really figuring out. So for instance, when we were talking to some of the leaders who work with the homeless population, they said, you have to be careful about sign-ons and passwords, because a lot of these people, they lose cell phones all the time, not because they're forgetful, but because they're in vulnerable circumstances. Their cell phone might get stolen or whatever. And so saving a password to a phone, they'll perhaps lose that phone and not have that information. So even just some of these very small issues were critical in reshaping our thinking.
And it's probably the toughest aspect of not just this challenge, but I mean, if you look at the global issues, that's what we all are solving in a way. And it's important not to bring kind of like your political views and your judgmental and your economic views, because we've heard them all. Anyway, I'll just step away from that, but really just to bring that empathy and have an appreciation that, look, they're living the life that I don't even know how to describe, or I forgot. Like, yes, I lived paycheck to paycheck when I was young and stupid, and it's like I forgot how it feels. But there are people who do that, and it gives us, and I'll just speak for the three of us and maybe the team, the broader team, it just gives you a sense of humility and appreciation. And for all of us, we just need to kind of get off our white horse or a pedestal or whatever or a stage, whatever we think we're sitting or standing on, and just really have a dose of humility and look at the world and say, look, I acknowledge that there are lots of problems, and I'll do my non-judgmental thing to help it. It is very difficult. If it had been easy, it would have been done already. And it's not just something that 3 research sessions will solve the problem. No, it won't happen. But taking the empathy path, we believe, will give us more insights and more appreciation and less judgment. And will give those people who want to make a change in their lives a very positive change. So that is my soapbox, and I'm stepping off of it, and I'm going to be humble for a minute. So that's it.
So I think everybody, Tara and Zhenya, they acknowledge some of the very monumental points about how we incorporated equity into our research and things, and I'd be happy to speak to some of the technological aspects where we tried to interweave it. For example, we'll have a web-based app for those without mobile phones or smart devices or tablets, and that would be able to be accessed at any library. So we're going to incorporate in our product roadmap the Texas Wi-Fi Finder. That's actually a really new feature, so that is at every public library. a user will be able to geolocate, and we'll also be able to just kind of help them promote that, so that if you are experiencing homelessness, you can go to a public library, use the internet, still use the One City app to access social services, in assistance, public assistance in any form, and just to avail themselves of those resources. We also, have on our roadmap, just a voting feature. It was incredible to hear some residents express the need to find the nearest place to vote. And I think it just seems timely. And of course, it's not a state or a federal kind. It's not a state or a county type of issue. It's more of that federal issue when they were talking about federal elections, but also local elections. And so building with equity in mind means a lot of things. It doesn't always mean, just, socioeconomic, cultural, ethnic. It's accessibility, for folks who just don't have that. And so, true equity is propping them up, to the same level where we're at.
Yeah, I mean, I think y'all have been saying it, I don't know how many times throughout this hour, but it's at the core of what you do. And it's just empathy, really, at the end of the day, right? Empathy, listening to people, and taking that as your guide for the problems you're solving. So very cool. Love it. So as we're getting closer to the end of our hour for lunch, I was hoping you guys might have a few tips for entrepreneurs. I mean, we have a lot of people in our community trying to build all these new things all the time. And what are some things that they like questions they should ask themselves, or just things you think that they could apply as an entrepreneur from this empathetic, customer-oriented, human-centered perspective?
Go for it, David.
So in my so like I alluded to, I've had a couple of companies, and I still have one. I think that it's important for young entrepreneurs to just take a risk, and be able to, try a new, avenue and approach. And if it's a new service line, really go out and explore, because you're going to learn a lot more lessons through failure, honestly. And if you're going to fail fast, because you just don't want that slow failure. I mean, know when to cut a business loose, or a product line, or a service. I can't tell you how many times I've pivoted in the past, 12, 13 years since I've owned Exegete. And, I've white labeled everything from SEO services for, healthcare organizations to, I continue to do strategic planning and things, and you find what fits, and you keep going. And you surround yourself with good people, good partners, a good team. And I feel like that's what we have here at RedSquared. I mean, with this challenge, we just have a great team with diverse skill sets. Try to avoid, a lot of the like-mindedness that you can find in a team, because at that point, sometimes there's a bit of just sort of everybody's agreeing for the sake of agreeing. And so you can have healthy dissent. You can have healthy discussion and debate, and differing points of view are only going to sharpen the team, and really kind of help keep you towards your mission. So try to have that clearly defined mission, have the goalpost in sight, and your team's going to help get you there.
Tara, do you have anything?
Becoming an entrepreneur was the last thing on my radar ever. So I am more surprised than anyone that I am. But I do really value here's what I would say. Because I'm not an entrepreneur at heart, because that's not something that I ever prepared for, knowing my purpose and understanding the value of what I do and staying true to that has been, I think, what makes me most successful in that role. And David mentioned pivoting, and I think that is consistent with this as well. You can understand the impact that you want to have and understand the value of your expertise, and also understand that those might combine in different ways. So just because the first idea didn't work doesn't mean that you're not good enough or that you don't have a good idea. It means that you have to explore and bend a little bit, but do stay true to that vision and to the understanding of who you are. I'm never going to become one of those guys on Shark Tank. But that's not the value that I bring. But I do bring a unique view of why people do what they do, and I can see the value. And so I would urge people who are interested in becoming entrepreneurs, you don't need to have thought about it since you were 5 years old. You can start a company and not actually totally understand everything, especially if you partner with someone like Zhenya who knows the ropes and's got it all under control. That's really smart. So I would say to be open to this idea and never cast yourself as someone who, I'm not the entrepreneurial type. We can all become entrepreneurs if we so choose.
Well, this is a great insight from Tara. Somehow she fooled me. I still don't believe that she's not, but we are. So I have a few kind of like practice what you preach type of suggestions. And number one is get a good team. Don't do it alone for a variety of reasons. That does get lonely out there, and there are like days when you need a friendly word or somebody to pick you up. I know your family and friends can do it, but a good partner really can understand the specifics of the business and provide that. It's finding a mentoring or some kind of a coaching arrangement is very helpful, and I know Geekdom is great at that. So please do use the resources. As one of my best bosses used to say, don't fall in love with your idea. And somehow it just, life reminds me of that quote every day. So just because we have to believe that our idea is great, otherwise why implement it? I would suggest kind of like shadow an entrepreneur for a day. If you want to open a bakery, work in a bakery. If you want to become a chef, well, go work in that steamy kitchen and see how that is. Interview people. If you want to be a nurse, have you been on your feet for 10 hours a day talking to like try to experience that, and don't just fall in love with your idea, an idea that I'm going to run a business and be my own boss. Yes, you will. You also will be your own dishwasher and toilet cleaner and complaint resolution. You'll be everything, and it might get to be too much. So kind of do your own research. Like I had a business background. When I started a business, guess what I did? I interviewed business owners, entrepreneurs, and people like me who left corporate environment because I was scared. There's fear, like, how's it going to go? Am I going to be able to support the family? And nobody was under a bridge. Nobody was starving. Nobody was unhappy. Everybody had their own path. They found it. And for me, it was reassuring. It's like, okay, I'm going to make it. So do your own research and, test your ideas with potential customers. Like we're going to test our prototype. Currently, let's just say we're in love with it because we invested so much, but we're going to test it and we know we're going to get humbled. It's like, oh, that flow didn't quite work. That screen wasn't intuitive. So we are prepared for that. Things are just not perfect in our own head, and we have to, like testing with the real world. It's important. Just like a lot of things that we don't like, sort of airline seats come to mind. They probably don't get tested very often. Otherwise, the feedback would have been, Anyway, I don't mean to pick on anybody, but just to give you an examples of we deal in life with a lot of things that nobody asked us, and if our customer voice was heard, maybe things would have been a little bit easier for the consumers. So just think about your potential customers and do some research. Family and friends are good for that. Yeah, use them.
Awesome. I think that's a lot of lovely advice and perspective for sure from each of you. So thank you so much for that. And to kind of wrap us up here, how can our Geekdom community help you guys out?
All right. So, really a shout out to the Geekdom community and the Geekdom family. I've been a member for a few years, and I've really come to meet a lot of great people. And I think that one thing that we could use help with is, basically, beta testers, folks who could help give us feedback, tell us if our baby's ugly, so to speak. And sometimes we just need that honest feedback. And so we might be soliciting for folks to participate in focus groups. Absolutely, we want to hype up early adopters, and folks who could test out our app when it's ready and give us a lot of feedback. So
and in a spirit of giving back, I've learned about Geekdom when I started the business, and I know maybe I don't come across as a sort of shy and timid person at the moment, but I kind of am, and starting a business was very scary for me. So I would go with a friend of mine who invited, let's go to Geekdom. It just kind of slowly, I'm like, oh, people can co-work together. People can, this is possible. This is possible. So in many ways, it just kind of unleashed myself that maybe I wasn't able to channel very much in a corporate environment for one reason or the other. So I just want to acknowledge that it just kind of helped me to be more free and not be afraid to ask for help or interact with people, or really invite somebody to just drop into a meeting and test our idea. So as a give back, if any of you guys listening, if you're interested in either human-centered design or design thinking or design sprints, if you want to learn more about methodology, we used to come to actual lunches and just give a kind of free 45, 60-minute introduction. The offer is valid. We can, I know Geekdom does a unique program where we can meet in person. We're open to, teaching and sharing is at the heart of our mission. None of this is secret. It's not brain surgery. Anybody can learn it, and we're happy to be a resource for you as well. Well, we're all muted.
Yeah, so well, thank you guys for that. Yeah. So we will definitely help you get some people to test the app and all that. Our community is, I think, always excited to see what people are working on and get in and give some really honest feedback. So wonderful. And thank you so much, Genia, for just kind of touching to, or both of you for touching on just your experience at Geekdom and being part of the community. I feel a lot of the same things. So I think it's echoed among everyone here. But yeah, so thank you all for the experience today and for sharing so much about RedSquared and the important work you guys are doing and the One City app that you're working on, that challenge. We're all really looking forward to the demo day next Tuesday. So for those of you watching who are interested in really seeing more of the incredible work this group has done in the past 16 weeks, tune in next Tuesday, 7 p.m. live on the CivTechSA Facebook page. It'll also go out to the Geekdom YouTube channel, I believe. But tune in there. There's an Eventbrite. You can register to make sure you get the correct link and all the good information, put it on your calendar. And also, we have a really wonderful panel tomorrow here on the Geekdom channel at lunchtime, where Iris Gonzalez from our San Antonio startup is going to interview a panel of folks about kind of pivoting during COVID-19, which has been a huge thing.
Oh, wonderful.
We're really excited about the pivoting in a pandemic panel as well. But yes, so if you want to continue to also connect with CivTech, please follow us on social media, hop on our website, civtech-sa.com, and you can see everything that our programs offer. You can see what's happening and coming up, like events and all that good stuff. We are currently working with our city departments and some of our Smart SA partners on getting a new batch of civic challenges to kind of toss out for the year. So we're really excited about that. So stay tuned for opportunities to work with CivTech. If you're a student and you're hearing about this and you're like, I want to do this, tell your teachers, get them involved. If you're an entrepreneur, again, just follow us, see what events are going to start popping up. There will be some starting to roll out this fall so that you can get involved. And please, 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 everyone, again, tune in next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Thank you so much, RedSquared, and we hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.